The tabletop takeaway.
Game mechanics on display.
Three designers share the stage.
Pick a genre and we'll play.
The tabletop takeaway.
Welcome back to the Tabletop Takeaway. I'm Ananda Gunaratna.
I'm Charlie McCarran.
And I'm Trevor Muller-Hagel.
And this is our bonus episode on probability farming. But first, I will note that this is episode 41, and there was the one special live episode, but we have now done 10
mechanics.
10 different mechanics or genres.
Genres. I think genres
whatever
is
they are.
preferred.
Yeah, so that's like a special episode, right? 10's a nice round number.
Mm-hmm.
Psychologically appealing because we've got
10 digits.
We have 10 fingers, right?
Yeah.
We count least in base, 2 high fives.
We count in base 10. So significant episode, guys.
Yeah.
Hey, we did it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
What should we do for this bonus episode?
We should design a game during the I'm kidding. I'm sorry. Ananda didn't want to do that. I don't want to put him on the spot right now.
It's not that I don't want to do that, but I feel like we should talk about probability farming.
Okay,
probably.
yeah.
Probability farming the game. That was my suggestion.
Probability farm.
We could make a game called Probability Farm or something like that. So we'll table that for the moment and explain what this term is that you coined.
Yes. So probability farming is similar to engine building, except the engine that you're building gives you stuff randomly, and it does so during other people's turns. So you invest in cards, or in the case of Catan, you invest in areas on the board. And then there's some sort of random event, often rolling some dice, that will sometimes cause these things to produce stuff for you. So you get stuff at random based on some randomizer. And this is just like on the psychological level, this is really appealing to people. There have been studies done with rats and randomized reinforcement where it's been shown that like giving people rewards at random is a lot more appealing than giving them sort of systematically, which also sort of ties into the general concept of the mystery box with booster packs and. But I think this is one of the core things that makes probability farming a really appealing mechanic.
And unlike the rats that are just pushing a lever every time, like we're making decisions about what to buy. In the case of Machikoro, you're buying little farms or stores and stuff. And Space Base, you're buying ships. Mm-hmm. And in Catan, you're deciding where to place your settlements and cities to get resources.
Yeah. And also, it keeps people engaged when it's not their turn. Even if they're not making any choices, just getting stuff somehow keeps people invested in what's going on.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And, well, I guess I want to ask Trevor, because you've been working on a probability farming game.
So after we started researching them, sorry, I don't want to interrupt you here.
No.
I was just like, there's just not many of these games out here. I tried to find, Machikoro specifically, and like games that are like Machikoro. I've asked people at stores, just general fans of games or of Machikoro specifically. And it's just been hard to find a good library of these games that we can compare. So I decided, I would love to design one of these. And so I started doing it at Origins, of all places. So that was a lot of fun to work on. And you two have played it, I think, yesterday?
Yeah.
Wow,
oh, yeah.
God, days are weird.
Yep. And the cool part about it is...
it's cooperative.
Yeah.
A cooperative probability farming game.
Which I think is a great idea because, the way that the one that you showed us, you roll 3 dice and then you have to choose which ones to give to the group rather than keep for yourself.
Right.
And since it's co-op, there's, I guess, an element of, okay, this is good for everyone, so, I should give this out versus, I really need these ones, so I should take these and let other people have this.
Right, yeah.
Deciding which one of those.
Yeah, and, that was a kind of spur-of-the-moment decision while I was at Origins. I had a playtester come by, and he actually suggested it, and I didn't get his name. And I feel really really guilty about that now because he's like, oh, that's a great suggestion.
Because how did it work originally?
I was just playing with concepts. I'm like, okay, well, let's try the 2 and do all of them. And like that's a lot to deal with. And so he's like, oh, well, you want someone like the active player to be special, to be kind of like get a special benefit on their turn. Otherwise, you're just rolling dice and everyone gets a benefit, which I see some benefit there as well. But for this, it felt really good to have that control over that situation, almost like I think it's San Juan, where you choose an action and everyone follows, the lead and follow mechanic.
Yeah.
It's a little bit kind of like that, except you get to hold your own pieces and then also engage with everyone else on the community die.
You know, that's a good point. I don't think we've talked about so in Space Base, cards that activate on your turn are more powerful than the version of them that you get when you deploy them.
Right.
So they'll like be better. Versus in Machikoro, cards that activate on anyone's turn they're the same no matter whose turn it is. And similarly in Catan, it doesn't matter who rolls the dice.
Right.
Everyone gets the resources. And I think there is something to having stuff you get during your turn be better.
Yeah.
So that, you know, it feels like your turn is special because it's yours, as
Yeah.
opposed to just, well, anyone could roll these dice.
Right.
So that's a good point. And that does connect to leading and following, I think, is a more general class of probability farming is a special class of lead follow type games, which have similar benefits, right? Because in games where you lead and follow, somebody chooses an action and everybody gets to do a lesser version of that action generally. And this is a very useful mechanic. Like I use it in my game Sprocket Forge to keep people engaged when it's not their turn.
Yeah.
But making sure that the lead action is stronger than the follow action is really important. Otherwise, people feel like they're not getting any unique benefit out of their turn.
Yeah.
Now, in a probability farming game, it's a little bit different because you're not actually choosing which action to take. You're rolling some dice. So you can get away with not having the lead action be stronger, but I think there is a benefit to making it stronger. So you feel like your turn is
especially
special.
in a co-op space too,
Right.
because like you want to be different. Every now and then, right? Like,
right. That's a good point. Identity is even more important there.
Yeah, because otherwise it's all same.
Yeah, and that's what I was actually just going to mention as my takeaway from your game, Trevor.
Oh, I'm getting a takeaway of my own? Oh.
Yeah, because it made me realize when we each of us had kind of a different specialty, and it really came out when you were deciding where to get the dice to, because it was like, oh, we needed me to be the revealer of cards, we needed Ananda to be the forger, and so on.
The builder. Yep.
And it sort of made me realize that with these probability farming games, you have your own tableau, you're kind of doing your own thing, and you might watch what the other people are doing, but if it's cooperative, you can actually really pay more attention and feel like you're showing off for other people, like in a good way. Like,
look what I did for us,
helping versus like
I protected Catan.
Exactly, yeah. And in the other games, it's sort of more like, the only reason I care about your board is if you're gonna attack me,
right?
Which isn't the best feeling.
I appreciate that, Charlie. Thank you for talking about it. I love this genre. I think probability farming has got a lot going for it, especially for me when we start leaning into games that have more. I don't want to say ubiquitous. Is that the right word? But just where you always get something, and then the dice tell you how much you get. And so that like you're able to gear your things a little bit better and be able to do a little bit more on your turn than you were before, which gets you into those new classes of being able to get stuff, or being able to do something that's really interesting. I really like that. And so the other game that I found is Valeria Card Kingdom, which I played at Origins, which then inspired me to make this game, because it just had it took some of this probability farming and kind of gave you a lot more options. So like Space Base, you roll 2 die and you choose either each die individually or the sum of them together. Valeria, you choose both of those. You get both of those always. Everyone gets them. So everyone always gets the 2 individual die and the sum of the 2 die together, which means that you are probably going to get something. You start off with, I think, a 6 and a 7 as your cards. I don't remember exactly. But yeah, you start getting cards, and even if you don't get something on your turn, or I think it's when it's on your turn, you still get a resource. So no matter what, you are getting something. There's more resources in that game. All of the characters are locked to a probability, I believe, so more like Machikoro in that way. Mm-hmm. And then each one has an active and passive ability, so what happens on your turn or on other people's turns. So I think that's a cool way to go about that as well, is where they each have their own unique function, depending on if it's your turn or not.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
So if we were going to design a game, I don't know, let's just say Probability Farm, the probability farming game. What are some things that you would use from these games we've played that you want to try?
I think playing around as Space does with effects and the related probabilities, like swapping cards and whatnot, I think that's pretty cool, and I would probably want to see some of that. I guess when I imagine a probability farm, I'm imagining obviously a farming game where you're growing crops or something, maybe played on a grid, so there's a spatial aspect, and maybe crops can trigger other nearby crops, so that you can plant a 2 next to a 7, and so then even though 2 is
when you water 2s, it waters the 7 as well.
Yeah,
or
yeah,
vice versa.
Yeah. So I mean, it could be. I remember a while ago I was making a game. I think it was called Polyculture or something about plants, and sort of growing plants so that they synergize. It's like the Three Sisters thing, right? Sure. Like different types of plants will grow really well together. And I think you could do something like that with a probability farm game where you have low probability plants next to high probability ones, and then the high probability ones trigger the low probability ones.
But specifically those, so you can't, if you put something else there, it actually cancels or negates the ability.
Well, I don't know. I'm just thinking when you roll the dice, that determines which plant triggers, but then the plants affect adjacent plants in some way.
Sure.
So that how you plan out your farm, you can manipulate the probabilities to get good results or better results than if the plants were just planted alone.
Do like a rock, paper, scissors symbolic thing. So like if, they beat the thing, then they actually help the thing or something like that. That could be interesting. Oh.
Yeah, and I mean there's so many
ways you can do it.
And also actually I'm now thinking about photosynthesis and the shading mechanic in that game.
Yeah,
so
that's really
if
interesting.
If a tree grows tall enough, it's going to throw shade on
shade.
The seeds next to it to not grow.
Yeah.
So maybe there's something about that too.
Well, that's fun. Designing games is cool, kids.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, I guess one. Sorry, I'm just thinking back to something you said, Trevor, about which just reminded me of like the difference between the input randomness and the output randomness in like Machikoro versus Space.
Yeah.
Because like in Machikoro, you decide before you roll whether you want 1 or 2 dice, but in Space you roll the dice and then decide whether you want to use the individual or the dice together. And I kind of like the Space version better.
Yeah. I really like that too, because it just allows you to have more flexibility in what you're doing.
Yeah.
It also does lose the lead follow aspect a little bit, because everyone can choose independently if they do both or one or the other, or one and the other.
Right, but you get the lead follow aspect because the primary sector is going to be stronger than...
Right.
Well, although actually in Space that's not always the case, because like if you have a stack of say 5 things on 7, as I did, that's going to be stronger than the single card that you get as the active player, right? Because once you've built, the more you build up ships in one slot, the better it is for somebody else to roll that number for you.
Yeah.
But I mean that doesn't mean that being the active player is necessarily bad. I guess it's in the early game in Space, the active player gets more stuff. In the late game, the following players get more stuff, which I think is fine.
Yeah, and there is something back to the input randomness, output randomness. We've talked about this before and how it gives the game a very different feel when there's no decisions after the dice are rolled, because in Catan, when the number you've been waiting for finally rolls, like everyone shouts out, like, "Yes, finally!" The
oh my
12.
god, we got brick!
Yeah, exactly. So there is something just naturally fun about that. But yeah, I definitely like the decisions of Space Base.
I mean, you still kind of get that with in Space Base, even with the decisions, I knew that if a 7 was rolled, it was going to be super good for me.
Oh, right. Yeah,
so
that's
I was
true.
always very excited when a 7 was rolled.
11. After we played that game, I was just thinking about the number 11 because that was that was a really good number for me.
And Trevor also just rolled 4 12s in a row or something.
It got ridiculous after a while.
Yeah,
and
that was crazy.
In a normal game, maybe 12s are probably the best thing you can possibly roll.
Yeah,
in a way, but
and
not in a probability farming game.
I never upgraded my 12, even though I kept rolling them.
We all just let that 12 sit there. None of us bought it.
It's never gonna roll.
Nope, it's never gonna happen.
But then it did.
Yeah,
so many times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the gambler's fallacy, though. Right?
Yeah.
You can't assume it'll keep rolling.
Yep. Gambling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other thoughts on what you would do with a probability farming game?
Well, while we've been talking, I had a new thing come into my mind, which is really annoying because I don't have enough time for all this stuff. But imagine having a 4-dialed player board, and it's empty on top. You can put little square tiles in each slot, so there's 4 slots. And then as you replace cards in those slots, you can rotate the dial 1, and it improves the range of that slot. And so you're actually improving the range every time, and then every time it's replaced. And so it's just like a fun little...
Yeah.
And then you can focus on one area or another, it seemed like a really interesting idea that I had 5 seconds ago while we were talking.
Yeah. I like the idea to give yourself more flexibility as the game goes on.
Yeah.
Because, all of these games are pretty much set. Catan, you place, and if you placed on the wrong numbers, you're out of luck. Machikoro, the card itself is the number, so and same with Space Base. So
although Space Base you can move them around.
Space Base you can
move around. A little bit,
yeah,
rare cases.
Yeah, sometimes.
I mean, it depends how you're building your space station. Some people can just swap them around all they want easily.
You get the warp engine, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Oh, takeaways, right. I think my takeaway is sort of similar to the lead follow thing. When it's your turn, you probably should get more stuff than you get when it's someone else's turn. Maybe. Although, actually, in Space Base, it didn't feel that bad that I was getting more stuff during other people's turns.
To you, it didn't feel bad.
But, yeah, just giving players an advantage when it's their turn.
Yeah. I do like that.
Do you guys think about... This is a tangent, but...
You may have thought we were wrapping up, but no, we've got more.
Well, no.
It's a bonus episode.
When we were picking games, I wanted to find a game that had not just 2d6. Because... Yeah, but on the other hand, everyone knows the odds of 2d6 now from Catan. Thanks, Catan.
Thank you, Catan.
And so maybe it's just one of those things that's inherent thing to this genre is just, hey, it works as a curve for probabilities. Just use 2d6 because 3 dice, if you add them up, it's going to get too complicated.
It's going to be a steep bell curve.
It's network effects, right? Like if you deviate from what people are used to, then there's going to be a penalty to your game. So usually, unless you have like a really compelling reason, it makes more sense to go with whatever people are used to,
right?
Because then they'll automatically be familiar with it.
Yeah, but could you make a game that is, maybe card based, but still has aspects of this?
Well, certainly. I mean,
probability.
Even for Catan, there's the event deck, which mimics the probability of the dice, but it's cards instead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you definitely could. I know I've played a game that's done that. But yeah, where you actually draw something and something on it triggers something else based off of what you've invested in. But I can't remember what that would be. I feel like I almost want to say Marvel Champions, but that's not right because you don't actually build your deck as you're playing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there is a game out there in the back of my mind somewhere. Yeah, I think for me, for probability farming games, I've probably already said this, and I've said it in a different episode too. I probably said it in 2 episodes actually at this point. But being able to get stuff when it's not your turn, and also for sure being able to get stuff when it is your turn. Even I think Valeria, like you only get a couple cards to start, and it's like a 5 or a 6 or 6 or 7, and you're probably not going to roll that. I mean, that's only a couple things out of the 36 probabilities, but ultimately you still get to choose a resource if you don't get one. And I think like just giving that little benefit, that little nugget, makes it worth it. It makes it feel like, okay, now I can still do something. Same thing actually, Machikoro starts you out with 3 money, and a lot of things cost 1 money in Machikoro, especially the starting things. So like even though you may not have gotten something that first turn, you can still buy. And that was my thing for Space Base too. Is like, yeah, at least you can still do something, because you still have that income going up and stuff like that. Or you have all 12 ships and they're all 1 coin, or they give you income. All those things. So yeah, there's just having something that you get.
Yeah.
Even if it's just the 1 penny in a 5 penny slot machine, just that little nugget to keep going. Yep.
Yeah, I think my takeaway, and more something I would be curious if it can happen in a game. All of these games use numbers from the dice, but none of them are really thematic to why is 7 this thing and a 12 this thing. So maybe that's my challenge for any designers out there.
For my current game.
Or for your current game, Trevor, yes. Why is this number meaningful in the game? And do they have to be numbers? Maybe they could be symbols that are evenly distributed. Man. So, there. There
it is.
Closing thought for me.
I'm going to go work on my game some more. Thank you all for listening.
Yeah. Cool. Well, with that, we'll wrap up our series on probability farming. Thank you, Ananda, for introducing this term into the world. And yeah, hopefully you've been inspired to make some games yourself.
And I just want to say really quick, since this is our last episode of the series, of the 10th series that we've done, thank you for listening to us. I don't know if we do that enough. I don't know how well the outro says that as well. But thank you for listening to our podcast. We're now at 41 episodes officially with this one. Just really appreciate it.
Yeah. And yeah, reach out to us. Trevor's been running the Discord for it too.
Doing my best.
Yeah. So if you use Discord, check it out. Tabletop Takeaway Discord.
We also have a Facebook group.
That too. Yeah.
Believe it or not.
All right. Well, thanks, guys.
Thank you,
Until
Charlie.
next time.
Hey, thanks for listening to The Tabletop Takeaway. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. So please tell your friends and visit our website at thetabletoptakeaway.com, where you can suggest games and mechanics for us to cover next on the show.